My daughter called me at 9:47 on a Wednesday night to tell me she needed space, not from stress, not from work, from me. I was sitting in the garage at the time, the same garage where I'd spent 31 years building furniture that nobody asked for, but everybody eventually wanted. There was a rocking chair half finished on the workbench, the kind with curved oak rails that take 3 passes with the belt sander to get right. I'd been making it for my granddaughter, Addie. She'd just turned 5. She liked to rock things. Stuffed animals, her juice cup, herself when she was thinking hard about something. I figured she deserved a proper chair for it. The phone buzzed against the pegboard and knocked a level off its hook. It was my daughter, Gwen. The message was short. It had been written carefully, the way people write things they practiced saying out loud first. Dad, Scott and I have been talking. We feel like you're always around, and it's gotten to be too much. We need room to be our own family. Please don't come over unless we specifically ask you. We need this boundary. We love you. I read it twice. Then I read the word boundary a third time, the way you'd examine a crack in a load-bearing wall. I set the phone face down on the workbench. I picked up the sander. I ran it along the arm of the rocking chair until the hum of the motor was the only sound in the garage. Then I put the sander down, walked inside, and made myself a cup of decaf. I'm Martin Caldwell. I'm 66 years old. I spent 34 years as a commercial contractor in the Pacific Northwest, the kind of work where you wake up at 5 in the morning and don't stop moving until the foreman calls it. I built hospitals, schools, a regional library that won an award I never got credit for. I built things meant to last. That was always the goal. Not the applause. Just the thing that would still be standing when everyone who worked on it was gone. My wife, Carol, her name was Helen. Helen died 11 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and mean the way it always is. She was 52. We had Gwen, our only child, who was 24 when her mother passed and fell apart the way you'd expect. The way I understood. The way I forgave completely. I stepped up. That's what you do. I helped Gwen move into her first apartment. I co-signed the lease when her credit wasn't there yet. I drove her to grief therapy on Thursdays because she didn't trust herself on the freeway. I was at every birthday, every birthday, every some promotion dinner, every Sunday that she wanted company. When she met Scott, I was relieved. He was from Tacoma, worked in pharmaceutical sales, had the kind of easy smile that makes you think everything is under control. He wasn't my type of man. He'd never laid brick in his life, never built a thing. But he made Gwen laugh, and that mattered. They got married 4 years ago. I paid for the wedding. $63,000, not that I'm counting. It was a 3-day event at a vineyard outside Woodinville, with a florist who charged $1,400 just for the centerpieces. I wrote every check without complaint because Helen would have wanted it, because Gwen cried when she tried on the dress, and I thought about Helen not being there to see it, and I figured the least I could do was make it beautiful. After the wedding, things changed the way they usually do. Not all at once. Gradually. They bought a house in Issaquah, a 4-bedroom in a cul-de-sac, the kind of neighborhood with HOA fees and newsletter updates about coyote sightings. The down payment was $85,000. From me. I told myself it was an investment in their stability. I told myself that's what a father does. Then there was the car, Scott's Audi, the one his image at work demanded. $12,000 to cover the gap between his trade-in and the sticker price. Then the kitchen renovation, when Gwen decided the original countertops were builder-grade and embarrassing. $30,000, which I sent over in 2 transfers so it didn't look alarming on paper. Every month there was something. A conference Scott needed to attend in San Diego. Addie's private preschool tuition, which ran $2,200 a month. A fence for the backyard because the HOA sent a warning letter. I wasn't resentful. I want to be clear about that. I gave because I could and because every dollar felt like a small act of love for a woman who'd lost her mother too young. That was the lie I told myself, and I told it so many times it started to feel true. But that Wednesday night, standing in my kitchen with a cup of decaf going cold on the counter, I finally stopped lying. I pulled out my phone. I read the message again. We need room to be our own family. I typed back 2 words. Understood. Done. Then I set the phone on the counter and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I made my coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. Not because I was angry. I was past angry. Anger is loud and imprecise, and I've spent 34 years learning to solve problems quietly with a pencil and a piece of paper. I wrote down every financial transfer I could remember. I didn't have to dig hard. I keep records the way contractors do, out of habit and self-defense. Down payment on the Issaquah house, $85,000. Scott's car, $12,000. Kitchen renovation, $30,000. Preschool tuition, 26 months and counting, $57,200. Various transfers for credit card debt, travel, medical deductibles, approximately $41,000. I stared at the bottom of the column for a long time. The total was $225,000, give or take. They wanted space. I decided to give them everything they asked for. I called my attorney at 8:30 that morning. His name is Roy Eckhart, and he has handled every significant transaction of my adult life. My company's incorporation, Helen's estate, the family trust I set up 6 years ago when I sold the contracting business. He answered on the second ring, the way he always does for clients who have been with him since 1998. "Martin," he said, "you're early." "I need to come in today," I said. "I need to make some changes." He knew my voice well enough to skip the pleasantries. "Come at 11. Roy's office is on the 14th floor of a building in Bellevue, the kind of office with real wood paneling and a view of the Olympics on a clear day." I sat across from his desk and put the legal pad on the table. He looked at it. He looked at it. He looked at me. "Talk to me," he said. I told him about the text message. He listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I've always paid him for. When I finished, he folded his hands and looked at the ceiling for a moment. "How much have you transferred to them in total? Ballpark?" "$225," I said. "Maybe more." He let out a slow breath. Not surprised, just measuring. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to stop," I said. "Everything. The tuition transfers, the monthly buffer I've been sending. I want to look at the promissory note for the kitchen renovation, and I want it called in." Roy opened a file on his computer. He pulled up the family trust documents. He'd been managing them long enough to know where everything lived. "The house in Issaquah," he said. "The down payment, that was a gift or a loan?" I'd written it as a gift at the time. I told him that. "Then there's nothing to claw back on the house itself," he said. "But the kitchen renovation, you have a signed note, 30,000, demand note, 3.5% interest. Call it in," I said. Roy put his pen down. "Martin, they don't have $30,000. "I know," I said. He looked at me the way he does when he's deciding whether to push back or just execute. He decided to push back or just execute. He decided to push back. Calling in a demand note on your daughter will damage your relationship permanently. You understand that?" "She texted me not to come to her house," I said. "She told me I was too present in her life. I'm simplifying things for everyone." Roy picked his pen back up. "Okay," he said. "Let's go through it." We spent 2 hours in that office. He pulled up the trust documents, the tuition transfers, the promissory note. He drafted a formal letter, certified mail, signature required, notifying Gwen and Scott that effective immediately, the monthly financial support transfers would cease, that the promissory note for the kitchen renovation was being called in with 30 days to respond, and that per the terms of the family trust, I was reviewing all beneficiary designations. He slid the draft across the desk. "Read it carefully," he said. I read it. I signed it. Roy organized the papers into a folder. He had the same expression Sylvia has in the story I'd only write later, a mix of concern and professional respect. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. "Go home," I said. "Finish the rocking chair." The next 6 days were the quietest I'd had in years. My phone, which used to vibrate every other day with some new crisis from Issaquah, was silent. No texts about Addie's school sniffles. No calls from Scott asking me to co-sign a line of credit. No pictures of renovation samples with the implicit question, "What do you think?" which always meant, "Will you pay for it?" I walked every morning. I live near a greenbelt trail in Redmond, the kind with a creek running alongside it and Douglas firs that don't care about anybody's problems. I walked until I was tired, then I came home and ate breakfast, sitting at the actual table instead of standing over the sink. On the third morning, I finished the rocking chair. I sanded the last rail until it was smooth as glass, rubbed it with tung oil, and set it in the corner of the garage to cure. I thought about Addie. I thought about Hattie a lot that week. She wasn't innocent in all of this, the same way a building's occupants aren't responsible for the architect's bad decisions. I'd made arrangements for her in the trust. A 529 education account I'd seeded with $40,000 and structured so that only I could authorize disbursements directly to a qualified institution. Scott and Gwen couldn't touch it. It would be there when Addie needed it. That part I didn't regret. On Friday evening, Gwen called. I was on the porch with a glass of iced tea, watching the light change on the greenbelt. I let it ring twice. Then I answered, "Hi, Dad." Her voice had the particular brightness of someone bracing for a conversation they've been rehearsing. "We haven't heard from you all week. I just wanted to check in." "I'm fine," I said. "Thank you for asking." A pause. "Good. That's good." She laughed a little. That forced laugh I'd learned to hear clearly. "So, listen. Addie's birthday is coming up. She's turning 6. We were thinking of doing a party at that indoor play place on Front Street. You know the one, with the climbing walls. We'd need to book it pretty soon. The deposit is $1,500, and with the catering and the favor bags, it'll probably run around $4,000 total. Since you usually handle her birthday gift, we were thinking maybe this year you could just cover the whole party. You know, as your gift to her." I took a sip of iced tea. "I've already taken care of Addie's gift," I said. A pause longer than the first one. "Oh, what did you get her?" "I put $10,000 into her education account this morning," I said. "It'll compound until she's 18. It can only be used for tuition, books, vocational training." Gwen went quiet the way people go quiet when a number doesn't match the spreadsheet in their head. "Dad," she said. Her voice had dropped the brightness. "That doesn't help us with the party. We already told Addie. We already told her friends' parents. We can't just, you and Scott have jobs," I said. "You can absolutely pay for a birthday party. We don't have $4,000 just sitting around," she said. The rehearsed voice was gone now. "The renovation put us behind, and Scott's commission check doesn't come until the 15th. And, Gwen," I said, "you told me 3 days ago that you needed space from me, that I was too present. I respected that. I'm still respecting it. What I can't do is be absent as a father and present as a bank account. It doesn't work that way." She didn't say anything for a moment. "This is about the text," she said. "This is you punishing me." "It's not punishment," I said. "It's accuracy. I'm adjusting things to match what you said you wanted." "You can't take it out on Addie," she said, and her voice cracked on her daughter's name in the way that meant she was about to deploy it. "She's 6 years old, Dad. She doesn't understand any of this. She just wants her grandfather at her birthday." "I'll be at her birthday," I said. "I would never miss her birthday, but I'm not paying for the venue. You and Scott are her parents. This is your job." I heard her exhale hard through her nose. "I'm putting Scott on," she said. "That's fine," I said. Scott came on the line 30 seconds later. His voice had the flat, measured tone of a man who has talked himself into a corner and knows it but hasn't figured out the exit yet. "Martin," he said, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "I don't think there has," I said. "Look, the message Gwen sent. It wasn't meant the way it came across." She was stressed. She has a lot going on with the Addie situation, with her schedule, and she just, "Scott," I said. The message was clear. I'm not upset about it. I accepted it. What I can't do is continue the financial arrangement we've had while removing myself personally. The two things don't coexist. He was quiet for a second. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means the monthly transfers are stopping," I said. "It means the promissory note on the kitchen renovation has been called in. Roy Eckhart will have sent you a certified letter by now, or it'll arrive Monday. $30,000 plus interest. You have 30 days to respond. The silence on the line had a different quality now. It was the silence of a man doing math he doesn't like. "You can't be serious," he said. "I am," I said. "Martin, come on. We have a mortgage. We have preschool tuition. We can't come up with $30,000 in 30 days. "I know," I said. "Roy can discuss a payment plan." I heard him put the phone against his chest and say something to Gwen. I heard her voice rise in a way I couldn't make out the words of. Then he came back. "This is insane," he said. "You're destroying your own family over a text message." "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "I'm stopping. There's a difference." I said goodnight and ended the call. I sat on the porch until it was dark. The green belt went quiet the way it does when the birds settle in for the night. I thought about Helen. I thought about the early years when we had nothing, when I was doing residential work for $12 an hour, and she was waiting tables and we shared one car and didn't complain about it because we were building something. I thought about how we never taught Gwen any of that, how we got comfortable too fast and handed her the comfort before she'd earned the right to take it for granted. That was on me. I knew it then and I know it now. But knowing how the fire started doesn't mean you let the house keep burning. Saturday arrived clear and cold. I drove out to the coast, Westport, a little fishing town on the Washington coast, where I'd taken Gwen every summer when she was a girl. I walked on the beach for 2 hours. I bought a fish sandwich from a place on the dock. I drove home. It was the first Saturday in recent memory that my phone didn't ring with a problem. The certified letter was signed for on Monday morning. I know because Roy's paralegal sent me the confirmation email at 9:14 a.m. with the scan of the signature. Scott's handwriting, rushed and slightly crooked. Gwen called at 9:47 that same morning. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was 3 minutes and 12 seconds long. I could hear her trying to keep her voice level and failing partway through. She said the word unfair 4 times. She said Addie 6 times. She said Mom would have never done this once, near the end, and that one cost her. I could hear it, because she knew it wasn't true. Helen was the one who used to say that love without limits isn't love, it's management. I called Roy instead and told him to proceed. What happened next I didn't witness directly. I heard about it from Gwen herself, later when enough time had passed that she could describe it without screaming. But I filled in the details well enough over the month since. Scott came home from work that Monday, with the certified letter already opened and refolded badly, the way you refold something you've read too many times. He and Gwen sat at the kitchen island, the marble island, the one I paid for, and went through the numbers together for what was probably the first time. The monthly transfers from me had been covering $1,600 a month toward their mortgage. Without them, their payment-income ratio went red immediately. Scott's base salary was fine for the life they were pretending to live, but the life they were actually living required my subsidy, and they had never sat down and done the arithmetic on what happened without it. Then there was the $30,000 note. They didn't have it. They were going to have to call Roy and negotiate, and neither of them wanted to do that. Then Gwen made the mistake of calling her mother-in-law in Phoenix for support. Scott's mother, a practical woman named something I won't pretend to know, listened to the full story and then said, apparently, "Sounds like your father finally woke up." That was the end of that call. The real confrontation happened on a Tuesday night, 8 days after the letter. They drove to my house. I had Scott's car in the driveway from the kitchen where I was finishing the dishes, the specific pitch of his Audi's engine that I'd heard 100 times pulling up to ask me for things. I dried my hands. I unlocked the front door before they could knock. They looked like people who hadn't slept. Gwen was in jeans and a pullover, her hair pulled back, no makeup. Scott had come straight from work, still in his dress shirt with the collar button open. He looked like a man who had spent the day losing. Gwen walked past me into the living room without waiting to be invited. That was her house once, in the way that children think of their parents' houses as theirs, until they don't. Scott followed, quieter than I expected. "Dad," Gwen said. She turned to face me. Her voice was controlled. She'd been practicing this one too. I need you to explain to me what you think you're doing. I think you know, I said. The note, Scott said. Okay, we understand you're upset. We understand the text was poorly timed. But pulling $30,000 out of us in 30 days, that's not a message, Martin. That's a weapon. It's a demand note, I said. That's the legal definition. You both signed it. We signed it because it was a formality, Gwen said. You were never going to actually call it in. I was always going to call it in if the circumstances warranted it, I said. Roy will tell you that. It's in the document. Gwen put her hands on her hips. It's a gesture she's had since she was 14, the one that means she's about to say something she believes completely. So what? One text message, and you blow up our entire financial situation? You're going to make us default on a note, lose our credit rating over one text? It wasn't one text, I said quietly. It was 11 years. That landed. I could see it. 11 years of coming when I was called, I said. 11 years of writing checks because it was easier than watching you struggle. 11 years of being the solution to every problem you didn't want to solve yourselves. I did that because I loved you, Gwen. But I wasn't doing you any favors. Scott stepped forward. His voice was lower now, the sales pitch gone. Martin, we're not bad people. We got used to a certain kind of help, and yeah, maybe we leaned on it too hard. But you can't just pull everything at once. We have a kid. We have a mortgage. You're not just affecting us. Addie's education account is untouched, I said. She'll have $40,000 waiting for her at 18 that neither of you can access. That's my commitment to her. The rest is yours to figure out. You're punishing your granddaughter, Gwen said. If we lose this house, you won't lose the house, I said. You'll adjust. You'll cut the things that aren't essential. You'll call your preschool and ask about the income-based rate. You'll make a budget, maybe for the first time. Those things won't kill you. They might actually help you. Scott laughed, but there was no humor in it. You sound like a motivational poster. You sound like a man who just found out the trust fund has a limit, I said. He went quiet. Gwen looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen on her face in a long time. Not anger, something closer to recognition. Like she was seeing a version of me she'd forgotten existed. I know you're hurting, I said to her. I know this is scary, but the text you sent me wasn't a boundary, it was a renegotiation. You wanted me out of your daily life, but in your bank account, and I'm telling you that's not a relationship. That's a subscription service, and I'm canceling. She sat down on the arm of the couch, not dramatically, just ran out of the energy to stand. What do you want from us? She asked. It was the first real question she'd asked all night. I want you to try, I said. Actually try. Pay your own mortgage for 6 months. See what it feels like. Call me when you want to talk, not when you want something. And when Addie wants to come over and rock in her new chair, you bring her. Scott looked at Gwen. Some unspoken thing passed between them. The fight had gone out of him. Maybe it went out the moment I said 11 years and didn't say it meanly. I just said it the way you state a measurement. They left an hour later. No slammed doors. Gwen hugged me at the threshold, briefly, the way you hug someone at a complicated moment when you don't have words yet. Scott shook my hand. He had the grip of a man recalibrating. I stood on the porch and watched their taillights disappear around the cul-de-sac. The weeks that followed were hard in the ways I expected and instructive in the ways I didn't. Gwen and Scott fought. I know this because Gwen called me twice in tears, not asking for money, but asking to talk, which was the first time that happened in years. Scott took on additional territory at work to boost his commissions. Gwen looked into returning to the graphic design work she'd done before Addie was born. Got in touch with her old clients, found that most of them still remembered her. They didn't default on the note. Roy worked out a payment plan, $200 a month, no interest, which I authorize because I'm not a bank and I'm not trying to be. I just needed them to acknowledge the weight of it. They did. The preschool thing resolved itself when Gwen called the school directly and was told, matter-of-factly, that they had an income-based sliding scale and that she'd never asked about it because she'd never needed to. The adjusted rate was $480 less per month. She called me after that conversation and laughed. It was the real kind of laugh, the surprised kind. "Why didn't I ever just ask?" she said. "Because you didn't have to," I said. The birthday party happened in the backyard. Gwen made a cake from scratch, lemon with lavender frosting, Helen's recipe, which I didn't know she'd kept. Scott built a small wooden obstacle course out of lumber from Home Depot, which I noticed and didn't say anything about, but which meant something to me that I filed away quietly. The kids ran themselves into the ground. Addie cried when a balloon popped and then forgot about it 30 seconds later and ate 3 pieces of cake. I sat in a lawn chair and watched and didn't pay for any of it. It was the best party I'd been to in years. I brought the rocking chair that evening after the guests were gone. Addie was in her pajamas, still running on birthday adrenaline, her hair in 2 lopsided braids. I carried the chair in through the back door and set it in the corner of her room. She climbed into it without being told. She rocked once, twice, looked up at me with the serious expression she has when she's deciding whether she approves of something. "It doesn't squeak," she said. "Good wood never squeaks," I said. She rocked again. "I like it." "Good," I said. "I made it for you." Gwen was standing in the doorway. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "Dad, thank you." I wasn't sure which part she was thanking me for, the chair or the harder thing. I didn't ask. I just nodded. On the drive home, I thought about the $225,000. It was gone. I'd made peace with that. Money spent on people you love doesn't really disappear. It just goes into the structure, into the foundation, and you hope you built it true. But there's a difference between laying a foundation and being one. A foundation holds things up. It doesn't move into the building and do all the living for you. I'm 66 years old. I have a house on a greenbelt trail, a workshop full of decent tools, and a granddaughter who has strong opinions about rocking chairs. I'm not lonely. I'm not bitter. I'm the guy who finally stopped being the solution and started being the father. Those are 2 different jobs, and one of them, it turns out, requires knowing when to put the checkbook down and pick up the sandpaper. I went home. I had another chair to start. I keep thinking about the rocking chair. Not the money, not the legal letters, not the phone calls, the chair. I built it out of oak with my own hands, sanded it 3 passes, rubbed it with tung oil, and set it in the corner to cure while my daughter was texting me that I needed to stay away. There's something in that image that tells the whole story more honestly than I ever could in words. For a long time, I confused love with removal of consequence. Every check I wrote, I told myself it was generosity. And some of it was. But generosity has a shape to it. And after enough years, you can look back and see that what you built wasn't a gift. It was a dependency. I didn't give Gwen a foundation. I became one. And foundations don't get to have opinions. They don't get to show up unannounced. They don't get to take up space. They just hold weight and stay silent. That's what she wanted. And she didn't even see the cruelty in it. Because I had trained her not to. That's the part that cost me the most to admit. Not what she did. What I allowed. The thing about consequences is that they don't require anger to function. Roy didn't raise his voice when he drafted that demand note. I didn't raise mine when I told Scott the transfers were stopping. The most powerful thing I did in this whole situation was stay calm while the structure I'd been propping up for 11 years finally had to bear its own weight. Calm isn't passivity. Calm is what you sound like when you've already decided. I've watched Gwen over the months since, and what I see is a woman I recognize from a long time ago. The one who figured things out because she had to, who called me because she wanted to talk instead of because she needed something. Scott built a wooden obstacle course out of lumber for Addie's birthday. He didn't ask me how. He just did it. That's not nothing. That's a man starting to understand what it means to actually provide, instead of delegate the providing. What I know now is this. There's a kind of honesty that only comes from struggle, and no amount of money can buy it for someone. You can't transfer integrity into a joint checking account. You can't wire work ethic, the things that make a person genuinely capable. The willingness to sit with a hard problem, to be embarrassed and keep going, to trade comfort for competence, those only develop under pressure. I spent 11 years removing the pressure. I thought that was love. It was closer to the opposite. Addie is 6. She has a rocking chair that doesn't squeak, and $40,000 locked away for college, and a father who now builds things with his hands on Saturday afternoons. She doesn't know what any of that cost. She shouldn't have to yet, but I believe she'll grow up in a house where earning something means more than it did before. And that's worth more to me than $225,000 ever was. I went home after her birthday and started another chair. I didn't have anyone in mind for it yet. Sometimes you just build because building is what keeps you honest.